Detective Elena Torres never imagined that Marcus Langley's disappearance would pull her into a web of secrets, danger, and betrayal that would test her skills and her limits like never before. Detective Elena Torres leaned back in her worn leather chair, her eyes scanning the stack of files that had just arrived on her desk. The rain outside streaked the office windows, creating a hazy curtain through which the city's neon lights blurred and shimmered. The case in front of her was unlike any she had tackled before. Marcus Langley, a prominent tech CEO, had vanished without a trace. No ransom notes, no signs of struggle, not even a clue that could hint at why someone would want him gone. It was the kind of mystery that demanded more than ordinary intuition. It required a mind capable of connecting details others would overlook. Elena's attention first fell on the digital evidence. Marcus's last known online activity was cryptic, consisting of encrypted messages and obscure social media posts that seemed meaningless at first glance. Yet her instincts told her that the randomness was deliberate. Hours turned into nights as she meticulously traced every digital footprint, every tiny anomaly. Each clue was like a fragment of a shattered mirror, reflecting only a piece of the bigger picture. She began to map patterns, noticing repetitions and subtle shifts in Marcus's online behavior, each hint revealing more about the methodical precision of whoever had taken him. The detective's life outside work had begun to blur. Coffee cups piled up beside the stacks of files, and the soft hum of her computer became a constant companion. Friends called, and she politely ignored the calls, consumed by the case and the pull of an intellect-driven obsession. Elena didn't just want to solve the case, she needed to. The missing pieces gnawed at her, each unconnected thread a challenge she couldn't let rest. She pored over corporate records, scanned through security footage, and reached out to informants who operated in the city's underworld. Each conversation added another layer to the story, revealing a world where wealth and power masked secrets, and danger hid in the most ordinary places. As the investigation progressed, Elena noticed subtle inconsistencies in the testimonies of those closest to Marcus. His colleagues seemed anxious, their eyes darting away when she asked the right questions, their casual explanations too rehearsed to be genuine. The detective's mind raced to interpret the signs, connecting dots that weren't obvious to anyone else. Late one night, as the rain hammered against the office roof, she uncovered the first real breakthrough. A series of encrypted emails that pointed to a meeting Marcus had scheduled shortly before his disappearance. The emails were fragmented and heavily coded, but Elena's experience with cybercrime allowed her to reconstruct the timeline piece by piece. Every revelation brought new tension, but it also sharpened her focus. She realized that this was more than a simple disappearance. It was a calculated act designed to hide something far larger. The stakes were higher than she had imagined, and the city's undercurrents of influence and corruption made her path treacherous. Yet, even as fatigue pressed against her resolve, Elena felt a familiar thrill. The challenge of unraveling a puzzle that seemed impossible, the satisfaction of tracing the invisible lines that others ignored, it was what she had always lived for. And in that quiet, rain-soaked office, amidst the flickering glow of her computer screens and the maze of digital clues, Detective Elena Torres prepared herself for the complex journey ahead, unaware that every step would test not only her intellect, but also her resilience and courage in ways she had never faced before. Elena Torres's investigation led her deeper into a world she had always observed from the edges, a world where shadows hid more than secrets, and every interaction carried a hidden meaning. The encrypted emails she had uncovered suggested Marcus's disappearance was linked to a larger network, one that operated quietly, yet with meticulous precision. Tracking digital breadcrumbs became her obsession. She spent long nights analyzing patterns in messaging apps, tracing IP addresses that seemed to dissolve into untraceable proxies, and identifying anomalies in the city's surveillance footage. Each piece of data told a story, yet the story was fragmented, deliberately obscured to mislead anyone trying to follow it. Her instincts guided her toward a web of underground hackers and informants who thrived in the city's hidden corners. They were elusive, unpredictable, and not easily trusted. Elena approached them cautiously, balancing authority with subtle persuasion, knowing that one wrong move could close the only door that led to Marcus. The more she learned, the clearer it became that Marcus had been investigating corporate corruption that extended far beyond boardrooms. His research had threatened powerful individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. Every step Elena took brought new risks. Cameras tampered with, anonymous threats left at her doorstep, and messages that seemed to anticipate her every move. It was as if someone watched her not just in the city's streets, but through the very devices she relied upon for information. The personal cost of the investigation began to weigh heavily. Elena's life outside the office became a blur. Meals were skipped, phone calls ignored, and nights dissolved into restless hours staring at screens and documents. Sleep eluded her, replaced by the constant hum of calculations, deductions, and the mental mapping of clues. Her thoughts circled Marcus, imagining his fear, his resourcefulness, and the possibility that he might still be alive somewhere, leaving her subtle messages to follow. The city itself became a character in her investigation, with dark alleys, quiet parks, and abandoned warehouses revealing secrets that most overlooked. One night, Elena followed a lead to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building was silent, its windows shattered and doors hanging on rusted hinges. Inside, she discovered a hidden server room, the air thick with dust and electricity. Rows of blinking machines held years of meticulously stored data, and buried within was evidence that confirmed her suspicions. Marcus had been coerced into assisting the criminal network, but had cleverly left subtle clues to guide anyone determined enough to find him. It was a delicate balance, a silent communication across fear and danger, and Elena realized she had to interpret it correctly, or she could lose him forever. The breakthrough invigorated her. The case was no longer just a puzzle to solve. It was a race against time. Every decision mattered, and every overlooked detail could mean disaster. Elena felt the adrenaline surge as she pieced together the network's operations, understanding the scale of their reach and the meticulous planning behind Marcus's disappearance. She knew the next steps would be the most dangerous yet, but even amidst the tension, her resolve strengthened. The thrill of chasing a hidden truth, of outsmarting those who believed themselves untouchable, gave her purpose. In that moment, Elena understood that solving the case meant more than justice. It meant proving that persistence, intelligence, and courage could expose the darkest corners of human deception, no matter the personal cost. Elena Torres's pursuit of Marcus Langley became a relentless test of patience, skill, and intuition. The digital clues and the hidden server had provided a breakthrough, but the trail grew colder with every step she took. The network Marcus had been entangled with was sophisticated, precise, and dangerous, operating through a combination of cyber manipulation, physical intimidation, and a network of intermediaries that left few traces. Every lead she followed seemed to vanish into thin air, forcing her to rely not just on evidence, but on instincts honed over years of experience. She mapped connections between missing persons, corporate insiders, and anonymous digital personas, gradually seeing a pattern emerge that linked seemingly unrelated events over the past decade. The deeper she delved, the more personal the stakes became. Elena realized that her trusted colleagues could not all be relied upon. Subtle signs of betrayal emerged, information that was withheld, inconsistencies in reports, and unexplained delays in official channels. One officer who had seemed cooperative suddenly vanished from the investigation, and surveillance footage suggested that someone within the department had been feeding the criminal network information about her movements. The realization was chilling. every step she took might be observed by those she considered allies. Yet, retreat was not an option. The network's hold over Marcus and the lives of others demanded that she continue, despite the growing danger. Elena immersed herself in analysis, piecing together fragments of digital evidence with physical observations from the city. She discovered that the network operated out of multiple safe houses, each carefully disguised and monitored to ensure that no outsider could infiltrate without leaving a trace. It became clear that Marcus's disappearance was not random. It was part of a meticulously orchestrated system that had remained undetected for years. Each safe house held clues, but accessing them required a combination of cunning, patience, and bravery. Elena traced the next lead to a location outside the city, an isolated property surrounded by forests and security cameras, suggesting that whoever orchestrated this had anticipated every move an investigator might make. As the pressure mounted, Elena struggled with exhaustion and anxiety. Nights blurred into days, and the emotional toll weighed heavily on her. She wrestled with self-doubt, wondering if she had misread a critical clue or underestimated the network's cunning. But every discovery reignited her determination. The small signs Marcus had left behind, subtle deviations in encrypted files, and patterns only an experienced detective could detect. These breadcrumbs guided her toward the next crucial breakthrough, hinting at both Marcus's location and the broader scope of the criminal operation. Finally, the evidence pointed to a single, isolated location that seemed to hold the answers to everything: Marcus's fate, the network's operations, and the hidden web of corruption and manipulation that had allowed them to operate undisturbed for so long. The journey there was tense and calculated, every step fraught with uncertainty, yet Elena felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. She understood that confronting the network would require all her intellect, courage, and experience. The stakes had never been higher, and failure was not an option. Elena Torres was poised at the edge of revelation, ready to confront a mastermind who had outwitted authorities for years, unaware that the confrontation would challenge not only her detective skills, but the very limits of her resilience and resolve. Elena Torres approached the isolated compound with a careful, measured pace, her senses heightened by the months of investigation that had led her here. The property was heavily secured, surrounded by high fences, cameras, and sensors, yet every element seemed almost designed to challenge her abilities rather than deter her. She observed patterns in the security rotations, calculated blind spots, and memorized every detail she could see from her vantage point. The stakes were immense. Marcus Langley's life, the dismantling of a criminal network, and the exposure of a carefully hidden web of corruption all depended on her precision and patience. Inside the compound, Elena found evidence of meticulous planning. Surveillance monitors displayed different angles of the property, suggesting that every visitor had been tracked and analyzed in advance. Yet hidden within the layers of control were the subtle traces Marcus had left behind, small inconsistencies in logs, coded messages embedded in files, and objects placed intentionally to guide her progress. The realization that Marcus had been communicating in silence both exhilarated and worried her. His survival depended entirely on her ability to interpret these signs correctly. One misstep could alert the captors and endanger both of them. As she navigated the compound, Elena uncovered rooms filled with encrypted data, documents detailing years of illicit activities, and equipment designed for constant monitoring. The mastermind behind Marcus's disappearance had anticipated every move, yet Elena's expertise allowed her to see through the intricate layers of deception. She meticulously documented each clue, creating a mental map of the network's operations, understanding not only Marcus's predicament, but the larger scale of the criminal enterprise. The deeper she went, the clearer it became that the network had relied on fear, manipulation, and the assumption that no single detective could unravel their system. Finally, Elena reached a locked room that contained Marcus, He had been kept isolated, yet his clever arrangements within the space provided subtle guidance. Notes hidden in plain sight, digital signals encoded in small devices, all meant to lead Elena to him. Her heart pounded as she carefully disarmed security measures and interpreted the final set of clues, realizing that the success of the rescue depended on both timing and accuracy. She moved with deliberate caution, avoiding detection and ensuring that the information she gathered could be used to dismantle the network once Marcus was safe. The confrontation with the mastermind occurred almost inevitably. The individual was calm, calculating, and confident in their design, yet Elena's intellect and determination allowed her to anticipate moves that the antagonist had considered foolproof. Using the evidence she had collected and the knowledge gained from months of investigation, she outmaneuvered traps, intercepted communications, and guided Marcus to safety. The network's operations were exposed systematically, and the antagonist's control over the compound was neutralized. Despite the success, Elena felt the weight of exhaustion, stress, and the personal sacrifices she had endured. The triumph was clear, but it came with the knowledge that her resolve, courage, and sharpness had been tested to their absolute limits, marking this chapter of her life as both victorious and transformative. Elena Torres stood outside the compound, the first light of dawn painting the city skyline in soft golds and pinks. The night's tension had given way to a quiet, reflective calm, but she felt no relief, only a deep awareness of the magnitude of what had transpired. Marcus Langley was safe, the criminal network dismantled, and evidence secured to prevent further harm. Yet the personal cost of the case pressed heavily on her. Months of sleepless nights, moments of fear, and the constant balancing of professional duty against personal well-being had left its mark. She understood that her life as a detective was never simple, and that triumph often came hand in hand with sacrifice. Returning to her office, Elena began to organize the sprawling files, photographs, and digital records collected from the compound. Every document told a story, every image a fragment of the larger truth she had uncovered. The case files were more than evidence. They were proof of persistence, intellect, and courage against a network that had once seemed untouchable. As she traced her fingers over the notes Marcus had cleverly hidden, she realized the subtle genius behind his actions. He had ensured his own survival while leaving a path for her to follow, relying on her expertise to navigate the maze he had been trapped within. It was a silent partnership forged in danger and trust, one that underscored the delicate balance between vulnerability and strength in the face of criminal cunning. The city moved on as it always did, oblivious to the intricate battle fought in its shadows. News outlets praised Elena's work, calling her a hero, but she knew the truth lay in the quiet moments, the analysis of overlooked details, the instinctive leaps that prevented disaster, and the careful choices made under extreme pressure. Friends and colleagues admired her success, but few truly understood the mental and emotional toll. Elena reflected on the subtle victories, the connections she had made, and the resilience she had discovered within herself. The case had pushed her beyond the familiar boundaries of law enforcement, demanding not just skill but endurance, patience, and unwavering focus. Even as she closed the case, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had confronted deception, betrayal, and danger head-on, and emerged not only victorious, but transformed. The experience reinforced her understanding that solving crimes was about more than justice. It was about piecing together human behavior, anticipating risks, and navigating moral complexities with clarity and integrity. Marcus's safe return symbolized the tangible results of her dedication, but the intangible lessons, the growth, the insights, and the reaffirmed strength were equally vital. Elena's story became a quiet legend within law enforcement circles, a reminder that intellect, determination, and courage could unravel the most intricate webs of crime. The city slept a little safer, unaware of the invisible threads she had untangled. Yet her satisfaction was not in recognition. It was in the certainty that she had made a difference. As she looked out over the skyline, the detective understood that her work would never truly end. Each case, each challenge, each hidden truth was another opportunity to test her abilities, and she would face them with the same resolve, intelligence, and courage that had brought Marcus home and exposed the darkness that had once threatened to remain unseen.